in our section of the world that are preparing for winter. In other words, like you said, fall and spring are gone. We didn't have a spring this year, at least where I live. We are now, the weather at night and in the morning just seems like we're into fall already. And we're not even into September. We're still in August. And this was going on...
Are you north of 40?
No, well, I'm in just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So I'm south.
We're experiencing the same thing up here at a remarkable schism. It's very noticeable how sharp it went suddenly into fall-like weather.
Yes. So that supports exactly what you just said. I mean, my gosh, what is going on temperature-wise?
Well, let me go back to something else. Let's go back to the WebBot stuff here for a second, right?
Yeah.
And some of the warnings I've been given. I've sold software to a lot of people, and a little bit of background, and I sold some to some people that were in official, let's call them the peripheral space business within the government. I developed a relationship with them over time. Mm-hmm. And when they retired, one of them who moved up with a bunch of other guys into Colorado, in one of the NASA enclaves up there, told me earlier the year that he was told by his... this is one of those hearsay things, but it goes also back to what the bots were saying, that the neighborhood guys were all preparing to put away 30 and 40 cords of wood.
30 and 40 cords? My gosh.
They actually told him, consider it as though you'll be living in Maine, and we don't even think that 60 cords might be excessive. Now, these are people that have reliable, presumably, propane heat.
Yeah, right.
And also have fireplaces because you lose power and propane truck might not arrive and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess there's just been a flurry of wood cutting among this particular little group. What do they know? That's getting back to the NASA thing. What does NASA know that's not telling everybody?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, damn. That's, again, that fits in with what we just said about we're going into not only a winter, but we may be going into a cycle of winters that are much, much worse than anything we've experienced back. When I was a kid, I remember our winters were much worse than they are, and I'm talking about the 40s. We had just very severe temperature anomalies in New Jersey where it would snow 3 feet.
Yes.
And then we've gone through a period of, let's say 50 years now of a very temperate temperature. But maybe we're about to come back again and go into a much colder climate. But as I say that, I think about then what's going on up at the North Pole.
I was just going to bring this up. The information we now have is that sea ice is starting to occur and build in Antarctica. This was, again, one of the things pointed out by many thinkers, such as Isaac Asimov.
Yes,
There's a bipolar, if you will, oscillation of temperature extremes.
Interesting. That in itself could portend the shifting or the flipping of the axis. That's
quite correct. And in fact was even the subject of a novel by Clive Cussler in his Dirk Pitt series, where they were going to, some Nazi remnants were going to go and sever the ice pack or something, shift the ice and cause the poles to flip, and would emerge as der Uberklasse when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a whole lot to suggest that his theme is not only taken directly from current conspiracy theories, but is also supported by a great deal of evidence.
Well, the evidence, I can sure go along with that, because what's happening is downright strange. I didn't realize that ice had been building, although we've had some...
Sea ice.
Sea ice, yeah.
Suggestive, again, of a shutdown of particular currents that we've all come to depend on. The currents themselves are not the motivators. They're more the indicators of what's going to happen. And again, what do the powers that be know that they're not bothering to share?
Well, let's go back, also, Cliff, and do you know that today there is a critical shortage of concrete?
Sure.
You go around to some of the states, some of your construction sites and what have you, and they will tell you there is a critical shortage of concrete. Now, you begin to ask why, and of course the initial answer from the government, let's say, is, well, we're using a tremendous amount of concrete over in Afghanistan and Iraq to help them rebuild it. No, they're not.
Or that we're shipping vast quantities to China.
Or, yeah, of course. Because China is buying it.
Yes.
Now, the other answer that has come up a lot of times is that, and again I'm going to my friend over in Germany because we had a very interesting conversation today, and Bruce brought up the fact that there are certain companies that drill underground, okay, and that they and a lot of other people are madly building underground facilities.
And the evidence supports that. There's even pictures of official Air Force insignia stamped all over every bit of it. Giant boring machines. Now, why does the Air Force need to be boring into the ground?
Yeah, I thought they were up in the air. They flew.
That was my supposition.
Right.
It'd be awful hard to build a hangar boring a bunch of long holes into a mountain.
Yeah, so, okay, we look at that aspect. We know for a fact that Russia, China announced a few months ago that it was going to build 1,000 more underground cities.
Yes.
Announced it publicly. Okay? Why would China want to build 1,000 more? How many do they have already?
70,000.
Is that right?
70,000 sites are referenced.
Where 70,000 sites were underground facilities?
We're not talking cities in every case.
No.
I believe that their accounting method is going to screw them up a bit because there are people out there undoubtedly passing off, root cellars as an underground safety site.
Yeah, but it is a
But
facility.
nonetheless, they've done an inventory and they had 70,000 plus.
Well, you blew me away with that one. Oh, okay, but let's.
We pick up all kinds of weird data.
Yeah,
some of it sticks in my brain.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly right, though, Cliff. Okay, so Russia, we know that Russia has built many of them. I don't know how many offhand. Do you know how many?
No, I don't, but I know of 5. One of the larger projects is said to be spectacularly huge.
Yeah, and they can hold. I heard something like 50,000 or 150,000 people in one of them in the Ural Mountains.
Yes. I think it's bigger than that, but yes, the idea is basically hundreds of thousands of people.
Okay. We don't know, or I don't anyway, know for sure how many facilities are in this country.
No, that's classified.
Do you have any idea? I mean,
no, I don't. I know that there's just been weird patterns in movement of material.
Yeah.
That would tend to suggest if one were to, wanted to really get in and connect all the dots, that you could derive a number that, say, might be 50, 80 of good size.
Oh, I think there's much. Yeah, I knew of, or at least I've been told there's well over 100, like 140 or more.
And again, my knowledge is old because I deliberately don't want to keep up on this. There's no practical benefit to me at the moment.
Right. Well, or me either, except that possibly in any of your runs, does anything come up in relation to this? Why are these countries, and this is all over the world, every major country is building underground facilities. Why?
That's a real good question. Of course, there are both the bespoke answers we get and the emotional answers that may be derived from that. They sort of both go to the same fears, the same fear-based driving force for it, whether it's bespoke, but that is to say whether they officially say that, or whether some human says, oh, geez, it's because they fear Planet X, or whether the Chinese officially say, we're going to build these underground cities because we've had too much issues with heat, and we know this is an effective way to deal with heat in a long-term, low-cost manner.
Okay. That actually makes more sense than any of it.
It does. Oh, it's perfectly believable.
Right. But I don't believe it.
I'm not too inclined to believe it as well.
Right. Okay. So,
just because of the sites that they're looking at to do so.
Yes.
Because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to, for instance, build a big, huge underground facility for the people of Beijing if it isn't anywhere near there.
That's correct. That's correct. The only other thing that comes to my mind, and we should get Jim McCanney on this, is that do the governments, plural, know of some horrendous activity of the sun that, unless you are underground at a certain depth, protected...
Okay, that's what they suspect.
Okay.
There's evidence, of course, to back up that suspicion with the recent gamma ray bursts and so on. There's also a lot of outside of the United States discussion in official publications and quasi-official publication layers, such as one might find in the scientific community of Japan, where they have a specific way of, this kind of peculiar way of doing peer review. And there's a lot of discussion about that. High energy patterns, et cetera, underground shelters, and long term. A lot of this references work by Scolari and other designers of cities and future city designers whose ideas could be adapted to underground living. And there is some certain fear-driven component of that, yes. Now, my problem in doing the bot runs is being able to go through and decipher from the bespoke and the descriptors, which are tied by a lexical emotional component there, where reality blends with the people's fears. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
because a lot of people are afraid of this, and so certainly there's a huge amount of discussion about it. But let me also put it to you this way.
Okay.
Let's flop the data, okay?
Okay.
Let's look at the emotional component and leave the manifest reality part of it aside. All right, so we can say that our data has shown over the course of the time that we've been doing this since early '94 that we're now in a period where there's a whole lot more discussion, flat out, of fear-related issues, all out of proportion to population growth on the internet, bandwidth speed, any other thing we could think of. So in a very general sense, if we want to look at it as a giant mystery of the mind kind of thing, why are all the humans with access to computers who are speaking on the internet and all these discussion groups devoting more and more time to expressing fear-related speech?
Boy.
Regardless of what it's attached to.
Boy, yeah. Interesting. I tell you, George, this is a quandary that bringing in some of the other things that you've talked about, not only in your runs, but the last time you're on the show and even tonight, and that is that the runs show that something major, and maybe you can define it even more, but major is going to happen the beginning of December.
A major emotional tension release is going to occur, is what our data shows.
Yeah.
Now, we get into real trouble saying, oh, geez, it's going to be, a Hindenburg-type incident, or Krakatoa is going to blow, or something like this. Attaching, again, the major, as we were saying, fear component, basically, to a specific instance becomes more difficult. But there will be a series of releases that will bring about the release, that is to say, the expression, the manifestation of fear and associated unpleasant emotional states in the globe, actually, beginning in December, but at the moment, all of our data seems more US of A focused than not.
Do you think that whatever the event is, and
it may be multiples, and it may be interconnected, so let's just let that aside. It might be a whole string of things that all happen all at once.
You said it might be energy connected also?
Interconnected, but it could be energy connected.
Okay.
We could indeed have some kind of weird Terra event. We have a Terra entity, that is to say, we collect all these words that relate to people's fears and expressions about the planet, and it could be something like that. It could be a solar burst.
Well, that occurred to me. I mean, what would be so traumatic and so tremendous that it could bring about exactly the results you're talking about? It would almost have to be something that big.
We've looked at it a couple of different ways. Now, let me specifically stop and say, curiously, odd that you should bring that up and should even direct the discussion that way, but curiously, some of our earlier data suggested that for some reason the sun was going to cause the housing bubble to burst. And I think we've discussed that earlier. And so maybe there's going to be a big solar burst such that people are aware that there's no point in making mortgage payments if the roof's melting around them or something along those lines. But let's also be real clear here that we don't intend to pander to people's fear nor magnify them. Our goal is to look out and say, oh, okay, guys, heads up,
Right.
And one of the things we could envision is that this level of emotion